On the WNTK Newsline, I have the president of the Ethan Allen Institute, Rob Roper. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Good morning, Ben. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. So, as I led in, I talked about the IRS scandals. We've just been plagued with them. But one of the things that came out, it turns out that Peter Welch, in it looks like March of 2012, he goes out and says, hey, we should be looking at these super PACs. He specifically points out Crossroads GPS, which was the Karl Rove-backed, 501c, and now he's backtracking on that. So what do you know about that whole situation?
Well, he did. He sent in a letter. This follows it was like 18 months after, I think, Senator Chuck Schumer and some other senators sent in a similar letter asking the IRS to target conservative groups. And I think if you look at what Welch did, if you take it just by itself, it's really not that big a deal. He asked an organization that's charged with enforcing a law to look into enforcing the law. But if you look at it in terms of this whole tapestry of things that have been going on, it's a big deal. And we have to ask ourselves, is there a systematic government-wide operation going on that is designed to silence conservative groups? And as the head of a 501c3 organization, the Ethan Allen Institute is a C3, not a C4, but we're certainly interested in promoting the Constitution. We talk about lower taxes and limited government. It really does hit home for me. And I want to know if this is, this is part of a bigger picture. It's at the IRS. It's in the media. It's in the popular culture. It's something that we really need to get our hands around.
And you're kind of on a double-edged sword. We'll talk about your radio career in just a moment, but you're a radio guy. You're with a think tank. Your congressman is out there saying, hey, some of these groups should be looked at and targeted. You got to be walking around like, oh my God, I'm under attack. All kidding aside, though, I am hearing, like you, I'm out there talking to people. I'm hearing people say, I'm afraid to say anything now. Is the IRS going to come down on me? What are you hearing from pundits and people you talk to?
Well, there's definitely concern. There's definitely concern here in Vermont, and I think there should be everywhere. And I hope this really raises awareness, because, as I said, this is the IRS doing this is criminal, but it's a cultural thing, and particularly up here in the Northeast, and Vermont is a very liberal place. I've done the radio, as you said, for a while. I've done a radio show. I've had my tires slashed. I've had my car keyed. And these are all attempts to basically shut people up, to intimidate, to use force. When the IRS does it, it's illegal. But it's no less immoral when you have people on college campuses refusing to allow a conservative commencement speaker to come, for example. It's part of the same morality. It's when you see, it was Anderson Cooper of CNN who coined that derogatory and obscene term teabagger.
Yeah.
I mean, why are we surprised that the IRS is able to think that they can get away with something like this, and it's a shoulder shrug for them, that they're stealing people's civil rights. I mean, blocking people from taking part in elections is a civil rights violation. But why are we surprised when this is so pervasive throughout the culture, particularly in these liberal institutions like government, like education, like entertainment? It's everywhere, and that's what we need to uproot. That's the big story here. On the
WNTK Newsline is from the Ethan Allen Institute is Rob Roper. You make up a good point when you say we shouldn't be surprised, and I know what you're saying. I've faced it myself. Now I haven't had my tires slashed or anything like that, but I do get some concerning emails. I get some that are like, wow, should I report this? I get some real winners, and you know what? I shrug those off as okay. It's a nutcase, but now I'm thinking to myself the other day. I told my wife I use my real name. I don't use any. My name is Ben Sarro. That is my name. And I thought to myself, to my wife the other day, I said, I don't know if I should use my real name, because am I going to get targeted now? Because I put out some strong conservative messages. Of course, the liberal viewpoints I have, that'll get forgotten. But I'm troubled by the idea that the government, when there's that person out there, that's hanging out in their mom's basement and they get mad at me, I can deal with that. But when it's my government, it's a whole nother ballgame. And I think we have a right, especially especially as I consider myself more of a libertarian thinker than a conservative thinker. But as a libertarian thinker, I'm feeling a bit of a pinch now. Should I feel afraid?
Well, I hope people wouldn't feel afraid. And as I said, I've had my tires slashed twice.
Sure.
I've had my car keyed once, but it doesn't dissuade me from doing anything. And again, I've never felt, physically threatened by anybody to do it. But with this scandal going on, Ben, I went back and I was rereading some stories about the old black laws after the emancipation and the end of the Civil War. And you had these literacy tests for African American voters, and you had them for the white voters at the time too. But they were administered very differently depending upon what race you were in. And it's sort of the same thing that's going on with the IRS. I mean, one of the stories was, if you were an African American and you showed up, you wanted to vote for the literacy test, you were asked to name like all 37 county judges in the state, which of course nobody could do. And this is the same thing as like if you're a conservative group going to the IRS saying we would like our 501c4 status and being asked, well, can you tell me how every one of your members prays and what they pray for? It's the same kind of question. It's the same use of a law to block people out of participating in government, which is a First Amendment right. I mean, the First Amendment says that Congress shall pass no law prohibiting or restricting freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of association, freedom to petition the government for redress of grievance, and religion is in there as well. But all of those things, they're meddling in with the IRS code, and it's wrong. And we have to figure out a way to fix this problem. And if we just have investigations, people need to go to jail. I agree with that, but people on the right need to put forward a real fix to this by scaling way back the power that some of these institutions have.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. One of the areas where I've been quite vocal is on this whole situation, not just the IRS. You've got the issue with the AP, the EPA, there's issues there, and it just seems to be steamrolling right now. I have a little bit of a fear that right now Republicans are going to be very careful and not to overplay their hand. They got to keep the heat on. They can't overplay their hand. One of the things that I'm hearing people talk about is impeachment. Now, in the case of Peter Welch, like you said, is it that big of a deal? Maybe a slap on the wrist, maybe just a reprimand. There's certainly other senators and representatives around the country who made comments early on about, hey, maybe we need to check these 501c. It's not a major deal. But as this thing develops, we look at, it seems like every day we get a little deeper into this IRS deal that it seems like it's hard for me to believe that the president found out about this at the same time I did, especially when we found out that 3 months prior to the election that some of this came out. But that's a whole nother issue. But, when I look at this whole thing, is there a fear within, you guys are a free market solution organization, the Ethan Allen Institute. Is there a fear that the hand could be overplayed? I'm afraid if something like impeachment is looked at, we wind up with a Clinton-era issue where the president could come out actually smelling pretty good with goodwill from the American people, and the Republicans wind up with egg on their face. We don't have the Senate.
Yeah, of course you can overplay the hand, and I think that the way that they overplay the hand is to focus simply on going after the partisans who did this. They really, I think, need to come forward with some sort of solution. People have mentioned the fair tax, bringing up the fair tax, bringing up a flat tax, some sort of tax reform that would scale back the power and the influence of the IRS, I think would be a positive way of going about this. Looking at the EPA, you brought up the EPA, that's sort of the same thing, where conservative groups were denied. They were denied FOIA requests, whereas the liberal groups were not denied FOIA requests. The conservatives were forced to pay fees that were waived for the liberal. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that they should not have the power to do in the first place. And we need to reform these organizations. We need to scale them way back in what they're able to do. And that's a positive reform that I think Republicans in the House and Senate should be putting forward as a solution to a problem. If all they want to do is go after people and prosecute them, then I think, you're right. There's going to be, they're not about solving problems. They're only about, inside the beltway gotcha stuff.
Yep.
Do people need to go to jail because of this? If it all pans out the way I think it would be, absolutely.
Sure.
But that can't be the only thing on the table.
Yeah, I agree. On the WNTK Newsline is Rob Roper with the Ethan Allen Institute. So, Rob, the Ethan Allen Institute, you guys are a free market think tank over in Vermont. A lot of people probably are listening to this right now, even my listeners in Vermont, and they're saying, there's a free market think tank in Vermont? Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Ethan Allen Institute?
Yeah, the Ethan Allen Institute, we're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. The organization was founded by John McClowery back in 1993. And, we're part of the State Policy Network, which is there are 57 free market-oriented think tanks around the country. Some states, every state has at least one. Some states have two. And basically, we follow what goes on in the State House. We put out white papers and stuff like that. Since I took over this organization in January, we're really focusing on getting tools into activists' hands that they can use to fulfill their own goals at the local level. So if you're a candidate and you want to know how your opponent voted, we're putting together very transparent voting records on people. If you're somebody who's running a business and you're curious to see how legislation affects you, we're putting together very short, easily digestible issue pieces. And the biggest thing that I've been doing is really just educating people as to the importance of free market capitalism as a moral basis for government. So I've been getting in my car and driving around with a PowerPoint showing people how it's really free market capitalism is the only form of government that's ever lifted anybody en masse out of poverty. And we can't walk away from those principles now and embrace other types of bases for government, redistribution and inequality, which have only led to more poverty and more violence. So we got a big job ahead of us at the Ethan Allen Institute, and you can learn more about us online at ethanallen.org. Check it out, and we've got our 20th anniversary dinner coming up on June 19th, and we'd love to see people come out to that. It should be a lot of fun. We'll have two governors roasting our founder, John McClowery, as well as a local comedian, Rusty DeWeese, coming on as he's sort of the ringer for the entertainment.
I'll link that to our Facebook page so people can check that out. Now, you're also a brother behind the microphone. You're on WDEV from 11 to noon, Monday through Friday?
I am. Well, I used to be Monday through Friday. When I took over the Institute presidency, I scaled it back to just Mondays, and my good friend Bill Sayre takes over the microphone from Tuesday to Friday.
It all sounds good, Rob. I want to thank you for coming on Live and Local this morning.
Hey, Ben, anytime. Happy to do it anytime.